Welcome, Divine Sister, on Authentically Healed Women's Trauma Healing Podcast. I am delighted to have you here. And today I'm bleeding. So I wanted to make a episode on menstruation, bleeding of women, and in that occasion, share a little bit about my views and my perspective on how we deal with, premenstrual symptoms, before we bleed, and also with during the bleeding, how we manage everything, what's going on in our bodies, and how to handle it and how to understand it really. So, um, first of all, in our society, we have made menstruation and bleeding something like we've ridiculed bleeding of women. And you can see it everywhere on social media, in TV shows. Like every time, there's, a reference to bleeding or to women's menstrual cycle or women menstruating, it's always um ridiculed, made fun of, and just yeah, ridiculed and made fun of. Don't think there's no other word that comes to mind. And I don't know for you, but I know that I grew up really, you know, first of all, women in my family that I was raised by my French side, who are European. And I was raised with, the idea that, you menstruate and, just deal with it. And as if it doesn't exist, like I was really raised in the sense that, oh, it shouldn't stop you from doing anything, which, it's not a bad perspective per se. But I was really raised in the sense that like menstruating meant like I had to be disconnected from my body. I couldn't be emotional. Like it's like if you were emotional, then you were weak, basically. Strong women don't get emotional over their period. They deal with it and they move on, right? Same with um birthing children, same with birth. That's how I was raised personally, okay? And then also like the more I grew up, I saw how people, were talking about periods and, the famous, very misogynistic comment of, oh, are you're emotional, you must be on your period, right? Um, and so I know that in my French side family, women, I think to counteract the ridiculeness, had created a numbness around their menstruating and just dealing with it, just getting over it, and never really connected to their bodies, right? Not allowing themselves to feel any emotions, right? To be perceived as, strong women and respectable women in that sense. And so I know that for me, for a long time, like I didn't, made a big deal out of it necessarily. I was really disconnected from my body. Plus, if you add, trauma, obviously you're even more disconnected from your body. But also like I had this numbness, I had created this numbness where I was really, disconnected from my body. I had never had like any insights or wisdom about what menstruating meant. And it was just like something that was inconvenient. You had to wear a tampon. At my time, I had, for a long time, when from the moment I had my first period at 14, I were tampons, you know? Now you know that there's so much horrible chemical stuff in it, but I was just raised with tampons and, pads. So, and you just, wear pads, tampon, and it was also this fear of blood, oh my God, I hope I'm not bleeding. I remember with my girlfriends, every time you had your periods, I'm sure if you're a woman, you've experienced that, that moment where you're just asking, um, you're in your period, or out of a sudden you realize you're in your period and maybe you're wearing a white jeans or something, but like you're asking your girlfriend, am I bleeding? Can you see me bleeding? Can you see like, and how many of our friends, or maybe it did happen to you. I don't recall it happening to me. Maybe it did once, but like, having bleeding through your clothes and people seeing it and the shame around it, like it was crazy. Like, oh my God, disgusting. Bleeding is disgusting. And so I grew up also with this idea that blood was disgusting, bleeding was disgusting. Um, it's an inconvenience and it shouldn't be seen by society. And society has like, it's gonna be, if it goes through your clothes and someone and you have the audacity to bleed through your clothes, like people are gonna be shocked. People are gonna be like, oh my God, she's disgusting. Like she must be very dirty and not really, civilized or hygienes or have a good hygiene. Like all of a sudden, like all of those, thoughts and judgments just came at us, at you because you had the audacity to bleed through your clothes and show your blood, It's crazy. Um, and it's crazy to me also that still to this day, when you see, on social media, the amount of content about how and content created by women, for women. Not to say that we cannot have a laugh, obviously, but that is actually in that mentality, you know? It's like patriarchy infiltrated our humor. And so now that type of misogynistic perception is like humorized by women for women, like, and we're ridiculizing ourselves. Like, it's so sad. But the amount of content of women like portraying themselves acting crazy because they're on their period and all the crazy stuff they're gonna do, the cravings or that time of or not necessarily linked to the time of the month, but just a moment where they're feeling emotions and how they're so unstable. Um and and just how women in general ridicules linked to menstruation, not only, but a lot, and it's just crazy to me the amount of content that portrays that today, still to this day, right? And at the same time, I'm not really surprised, obviously, because we're still in this empire, slaughtering, genociding machine. So at the same time, I'm not surprised, but it's still crazy to me that we have this perception and how blood is not sacred anymore. Blood is disgusting for some reason. For some reason, I mean, due to colonization of our ancestors, now like this empire, this system, this matrix, this hell has decided that blood is disgusting. Has decided that women feeling deeply are unstable, that healers are unstable, basically, like um that feeling deep emotions and going through a death and rebirth is someone being unstable, someone who needs meds. So, in my perspective and my opinion on this is that no, like menstruating and bleeding is about fully tuning in your body, fully tuning in your emotions, the same way, uh, the same way pregnancy is also this 9 months of transformation and deep emotional release and um like, we say we make also a lot of fun of pregnant women because we're so unstable, craving things, but it's sacred, and we've removed sacredness from those moments. Like, a pregnant woman is going through a fucking death. She is transforming from the inside. She is feeling huge intensity, and she is getting ready to be a portal for another fucking human being. It's huge. It's like she is feeling so much. And I think that sometimes, because we maybe lack tools, we lack either we lack tools or support, then obviously, like, we're going to be all over the place. We're going to struggle to ground. We're going to struggle to feel in the right way. We're going to struggle to actually embrace it. We're going to just feel like panicking, right? That's where we get emotional and might appear unstable. Um, and at the same time, when you're in your feels and you're feeling, you're gonna need to isolate yourself, and you're gonna be in a state that is not necessarily uplifting or fun. You're gonna be in a state of deep, deep feeling and surrender. So at the same time, um, it's normal that we feel deep, that we feel emotions, that we express, that we need to scream in a pillow, that we need to cry our eyes out, that we need to sing, that we need to dance, that we need to shed off everything, right? That is not unstable. That is healing. What the issue we might have as women is that we don't have our tools, or we might not be connected yet to our ancestral wisdom. So then we don't know how to deal with it, and we just are projecting our trauma, projecting our things, that our internal experience, and struggling to go inwards. But for empowered and conscious women, which I'm sure you are if you're tuning in this podcast, once you are conscious, empowered, we have our tools, we have ancestral knowledge that we can help us, but society still looks weird, and that is due to colonization, and the period also with witch hunting. Is that anything that reminds society of our indigenous, tribes that were everywhere in the world, that reminds of indigenous wisdom, connection with Mother Earth, and just our truest essence as human beings and as women. Um, it's really looked down on and badly on, right? It's like people are like, "What are you doing? You look like a savage animal." Right? Because that's what the colonizer, you know, how the colonizer named our ancestors. I don't know where you're from. You have indigenous ancestors. Everyone has indigenous ancestors. It's not just um um Native Americans, Owakans, Cherokees, Tainos for the Caribbean. Like, it's not just them. You have your Yoruba tribe in Africa. There's so many ethnicities in Africa. You also have in the north, in the north, you have the Sami that used to be in Sweden, in Finland, even in Germany. Like, you have also the Sami that used to be also, I think they were also, in East Europe, and then also Asia. So, like, in Asia, you have so many also indigenous tribes and indigenous ancestors that were genocided. Okay, so it's fucking everywhere. Okay, so don't even think twice about that. Like, everyone, you have indigenous ancestors that were genocided. Like, everyone has it at one point. So that's why, like, the system we're in is all about calling indigenous culture savage, calling, we love, our society loves to call everything like, oh, we should be civilized. But the more, like, in contrast to, oh, those indigenous that we enslaved or genocided or killed or forced to convert into our religions, they're savage, because they needed to put themselves above them to convince the public opinion as well that what they were doing was justified. Genocided people never justified, but whatever. And so those are savage, they're lost. They don't know what life is. We're here to help them make profit and become stronger and create more, whatever, like bullshit. So everything that reminds society of our indigenous ancestors is going to trigger a lot of hate, a lot of resistance, and people are going to judge that very harshly because we're colonized in our mindset. Colonization is not just what happened, centuries ago, decades ago. No, colonization is in the mind too, because the colonizers also manipulated and created also a lot of propaganda about it and convinced people that what they were doing was right. And so this propaganda has been um, transmitted from generation to generations. So and and even through those who are maybe more directly descendant to, you know, the indigenous ethnicities that were killed, genocided, um, but were colonized by English, Englishmen, Portugal, Spain, whatever, France, like um, even those, all of us, like we still have like colonization mindset, like we've been colonized in our minds. Okay, some of us also are descended of rape, like of literally rape, colonizer raping African slave or raping an indigenous woman. Like we're literally, a lot of us come down from the result of rape, of violence. So there's so much in our mind that is colonized, so much violence that we carry in our DNA. So as a result, as a society, we're still like confused, and a lot of us are still colonized. Um, and And so that's why when you reconnect with this essence of human being that our indigenous ancestors understood so well, and this harmony with Mother Earth, and just being yourself and just being the healer you're meant to be, the empowered woman you're meant to be, and especially the healer you're meant to be if you're a healer, like this is going to be really looked bad at. It's going to be like, oh, you're just being a savage or woohoo, like, and really harshly judged because were descended of also colonization and violence against people who had that wisdom and were being themselves basically and in harmony with nature, and had understood that. So due to colonization, menstruation has become something that's been also ridiculizing women because this system is built on women's oppression. I will still keep saying that until the day I die. This system is built on women's oppression. Everything that is happening is due to women's oppression, due to indigenous genocide. But also what we have to understand is that our ancestors, indigenous back then, women were held sacredly. We were respected and held sacredly. Our indigenous ancestors understood the power of women. They understood that life came through women. So we were held with such a high respect. But the system is based on oppression of women. They have erased that respect and destroyed that respect and sacredness and have treated us as slaves, as um, as objects, as um like sexualized objects. Like we've been treated like like worse than any dog animal. And so this system is based on that. And so they have to keep ridiculizing us to make sure we don't empower ourselves. And they need to keep reminding us that our menstruation is just another proof that we're crazy, that we're unstable, that women, are little girls that are unstable, that the big man needs to, to discipline, so like that's a huge bullshit that we've been sold, and they keep trying to sold us through media, any type of propaganda or just brainwashing and over again, and people unconsciously continuing also spreading this message and this perspective. But truly, menstruation, and when you see the cycle of a woman in menstruation, is just simply a cycle of death and rebirth. And when we're about to bleed, it's always this building up into this winter phase, this phase where we're feeling so deeply, we're releasing, we're healing. And in our case, like that's why sometimes our period are gonna be so painful because we have so much trauma, ancestral trauma. Back then maybe our ancestors didn't have that much pain, that much difficulty because they were not genocided yet. They didn't go through that much trauma yet. So now it's like our menstrual cycle is also about healing generations of trauma, like healing our ancestors who were raped, healing our ancestors that were enslaved. Like there's so much that we're healing during our period. And it's a sacred time. It's a sacred time of communion with our body, of with nature, with and we become this portal, for and this rebirth. Like we become this portal of energy, and we're rebirth. We're going through a death process and rebirthing ourselves the same way when we're birthing a child in a more intense way. We're going through death and rebirthing ourselves as we're being a portal. And we're portals in that way. We're meant to be portals. So with that being said, when the energy is building up and you're feeling this intensity and you're feeling emotional, you're feeling unstable, you're feeling like you want to explode, or you're feeling a lot of pain all of a sudden and you want to explode, you want to scream. It's painful, it's difficult. Well, first of all, acknowledge that you're connecting with centuries of trauma behind you. You're connecting with all those people who've been through so much trauma, all this lineage of women that's been through so much trauma. So it is this why it's painful. Secondly, um, you're meant to feel those emotions, and it's not about avoiding them, and it's not about, do not apologize for them, embrace them, embrace them. Then that's why I'm saying, like, when we need tools to be able to embrace the pain, right? So that's when ancestral knowledge comes in. Maybe you've connected with your ancestors. Maybe they had rituals, they had song, chants, dances that you can do that helps release, that helps move the pain out. But also, if you're dealing with mental health issues, if you have an actual mental health disorder, which I want to emphasize on as a therapist, even if you have indigenous tools, the amount sometimes of trauma that create mental health disorders, we need more than that in those cases, which means community, also community, being able to express what you're going through, your feelings to someone, a safe space, or someone that is supporting you professionally, and also trauma healing tools. And that's why I personally created like a course that focuses on trauma healing tools, understanding emotions, the different emotions, obviously, and what emotions, how, what what emotions are here for, and different aspect and perspective of different emotions, but also like trauma healing tools that help you access trauma and get into a trance state, get into a relaxed state enough, or also get you to access trauma through movement and different things, and different tools and techniques and therapeutic used by therapists, hypnotherapists, to be able to release trauma in that case, and different types of tools that you can use, right? Because there's different things that we're healing. So, um, but you know, in general, if you're dealing with just heavy emotion and difficult emotions, your menstruation, the time you're bleeding, and even before, you are allowed to isolate yourself. You're meant to isolate yourself. We used to bleed all together as women in communities. You are meant to isolate yourself from the world, from everything. You need to focus, you need to have space, you need to be able to surrender, because one of the most important component in death and rebirth is the surrender, is surrendering. Without surrendering, you stay in this very uncomfortable state, where you might go outside of yourself to try to control, to try to find a way to control, to feel in control, because you're feeling a lot inside. But the aim is to step out, step back, and feel and be connected with yourself, your rituals, your tools, your techniques. If you need trauma healing techniques, obviously, I have a course for that. But in general, using your tools. And that's what bleeding means. But also, like, what helps a lot with bleeding, I have found also over time, if you're not if you don't have mental health disorder, obviously, like that's another game. But what helps if you don't have a mental health disorder is mothering. If you have children, spending time going in nature with your children as well. Because your children are going to be also feeling your death and rebirth and healing. It's going to affect them. They're connected to them. As you heal, you're going to heal as well, your daughter, so, or your son. So they're going to go through, especially if you have a daughter, she's going to go through also emotional stuff along with you. So in those time, you can be close to each other as well, depending on, like, with boundaries, of course. But like, what I like to do personally, when I'm bleeding, is to go in nature with my daughter, or we just, have that time in nature together. Aside from that, when it comes to activities, I don't do activities as much when I'm bleeding, because I need, like, it's going to drain me. I need my full energy to deal with it, right? But what I like to do with her is go to nature together, play outside. That's something that is helpful for me when I'm bleeding, and also helps me, maintain the connection with my daughter. But even if, like, that's not your case, you can just isolate yourself from your children. That's fine too. I'm just saying that sometimes mothering can really be uplifting, and help with the bleeding, and help, like, connect with your natural rhythm, connect with in nature, having your child next to you, um, bringing you more healing, more cleansing. So that's what I'm saying. But so yeah, and understanding that when you're feeling a lot of pain, suffering, and you feel like you're going kind of mental, emotional, and you feel like you might feel guilt, you might feel like, your mind is going crazy, you might try to pick a fight with your partner, whatever. Those are just signs that there's something that's coming up very uncomfortable. So the best thing to do is to learn, how to step back when you're menstruating, acknowledging your inner state, and acting accordingly, but allowing yourself this space. Even if, like, you feel like you literally need a retreat with your girls, like with your girlfriends, with your soul sisters, like, go. Like, this is something that, I think, we lack today. And honestly, like, I'm creating this, I'm manifesting this right now. I want a community where there's a lot of women around me, right? And we can just go on, weekends when we're menstruating, or one is bleeding, or whatever. Like, if you feel like you need to step out and be with your soul sisters for a weekend when you're bleeding, just go for it. This is so powerful when we're in with amongst women, awakened women, conscious women, healers. When we're amongst each other, it's just so crazy uplifting, and it helps us also process, like, the pain together. Community, like soul sister community, is extremely powerful to, um feel our emotions and release our emotions. Is incredible. This is why, like, personally, I do that with, my cousin, who's like my sister. And when we're going through heavy things, like, we're just talking to each other about it, and we're just gonna be like in our fields and just supporting and being in this dance with each other where I'm expressing myself, she's expressing herself, we're supporting each other, and we're like healing together. Like, I think this is extremely powerful. Um, like that is so, so powerful when we're awakened, conscious women, empowered women. It's so powerful. Um, so yeah, I love it so much. So, so if you feel like you need to go on a weekend with your girlfriends, you want to feel like you need to be connected with soul sisters, women, connect with women, you know? Like this is the powerful time um in every month. It's your powerful time. It's when you're so connected to Mother Earth. It's when you're communing with Mother Earth and she's healing you and she's helping you release trauma, release heaviness, release what needs to be released, right? And sometimes I believe like if you know, when I feel like I'm going kind of mental, quote unquote mental, where I feel like, I might pick a fight with someone or I just get very, like there's a lot of stirring up inside of me, basically, you know? I'm not crazy. It's just I have a lot stirring inside of me. Well, I just step out. I step out. I connect with soul sisters if I need. I connect with my cousin if I need, like, I'm connecting with women in general in those times specifically. And I just I take a step back away from my family, from my daughter, from my husband. My husband is very also protective of my space, and he's very, um, he cherishes, like he treats my energy very sacredly. So even with our daughter, he is very protective of my energy, and have taught her very early that, my energy is sacred. So in my family, my energy is viewed as sacred, which I believe is our energy, our sacred, right? Our energy should be treated sacredly by our community, family, whatever, partner, children. Um, so I take a step back. I'm gonna go outside with my daughter if I feel a little bit more ease and I want to go to nature, and I'm gonna take her with me because she's gonna be a little also going through stuff along with me. So in those times, I'm also teaching her how to deal with her emotions when things are stirring up for her, but it's something that for me is uplifting, and it's not draining. It's completely uplifting, and it's done with such ease and in flow. So I really do it because it feels good to me again. So it's not to say that because you have kids you have to spend your time all the time with them and have them um have no space for you. That's not what being a mother means and is. So, yeah, that's it for this episode, Goddess. Thank you for watching until the end. If you want to check out my online course called Abundancia, the Ultimate Self-Healing Master Training, in which I teach you tools to access the subconscious mind and access complex trauma, head to my description and you'll find the link to that course that you can check out for yourself. In the meantime, I'm wishing you a beautiful summertime because it's summer. And I hope you're having a great time. During the summertime, the energy that I'm feeling currently is like we're needing a lot of rests and nourishment. So rest and nourishment has been something that has been coming up a lot as downloads and intuitively for me, and finding the balance, right? Finding your balance and focusing on nourishment and rest and surrender. So I wish you a beautiful summertime, sister, and keep rising, keep shining, and talk to you soon. Bye.